What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Depeche Mode, and indeed, we're back with some relatively new Depeche Mode that I only just learned about, which is further to say, I was visiting my parents the other day, and my mom had a Depeche Mode playlist going on Alexa, and it was just choosing random tunes from all throughout their catalog, and suddenly this track comes on that I didn't recognize. I was like, wait, what is this? And I looked, and it was a tune called Universal Soldier, which I'm quite sure I had never heard before. And so I enjoyed the track, and I was like, this is interesting. And when it finished, I looked it up. Apparently, this is a cover of a 1960s tune by Buffy Sainte-Marie, an artist I've heard of. I don't really know much of her work, and I certainly had never heard the original Universal Soldier, which I guess has been recorded by at least a couple other groups prior to now. But I discovered that earlier this year, I think it was like April or something, Depeche Mode recorded their cover version of this song for a compilation that's called like Help 2. And I think it's a benefit release that was put out to gather proceeds for the victims of military violence and warfare. Again, like people orphaned or otherwise the victims of war, and especially I think for youth, like children affected by military conflicts and so on. So, number one, that's a cool cause to lend your support to and to record a song for. And again, I only have heard this one time prior to this, but my sense of the song, and again, I'm assuming the lyrics are more or less identical with the Buffy Sainte-Marie original, seem to be about the culpability or responsibility for military violence, for destructive warfare around the world. And while that is, on some level, the outcome of choices, decisions, unilateral or otherwise, made by government and military leaders, I think essentially the point that it was making, while using a number of examples, like it references, France, the US, Japan, Russia, and so on, and it's saying that, like, on some level, we, the people who put leaders in power, and yes, people can be appointed who are not technically elected, but generally speaking, we elect people who then make these choices. So on that level, we individual citizens have culpability. And I think it references the people serving in these militaries too, saying that, like, they have values and, they don't want to, kill people for no reason, and they are on some level doing their civic duty, but they also are the instruments of that violence, and they are, of course, part of the responsibility chain which leads to the destruction of communities and families and individual lives. And so, from top to bottom, the people around the world in different countries and in various situations need to look in the mirror and to recognize that these universal soldiers are our own responsibility. Like, they're doing what they're doing because of us. And even if, again, there are people calling the shots, on some level that responsibility trickles down to lower levels, both civilian and service personnel, which I think is a fair point. Now, again, I heard it one time, and I don't know the original, but that seemed to be the essence of the lines that I caught. Sonically, it is very much in a territory I would consider Depeche Mode's sort of wheelhouse. And again, I get it. For a lot of people, the stuff they've made in the last 20 or so years, 25 years, may not be on the same level as the stuff they made in the 80s and 90s. And to some degree, I would maybe agree with that, and yet those who know me and my channel will be aware I like a lot of stuff they've put out in the last 25 years, post-2000, and there's even some songs which I find compelling where I know it seems a number of Depeche Mode fans are sort of mixed on their opinion. I think of Where's the Revolution. I like that song, and I know there's a number of people who don't particularly like that song or think that it's rich for, millionaire celebrities to be saying, like, hey, where's the activism and so on. And again, I'm not immune to that counter-argument Nevertheless, the point is, I like a lot of what Depeche Mode does, and my first impression of this tune was I was impressed with it. So let's listen to Martin and Dave and their cover of a Buffy Sainte-Marie song called Universal Soldier, which was, as I said, I believe, included on a, I don't know if you'd call it a charity release or a release for a cause meant to provide proceeds to the victims of war called Help 2. And as I said, this was recorded, I believe, in spring of this year, 2026.
He's 5'2" and he's 6'4". He fights with missiles and with spears. He's all of 31 and he's only 17. He's been a soldier for 1,000 years. He's a Catholic, a Hindu, an atheist, a Jain, a Buddhist and a Baptist and a Jew. And he knows he shouldn't kill, and he knows he always will kill you for me, my friend, and me for you. And he's killing for Canada, he's killing for France, he's killing for the USA. And he's killing for the Russians, and he's killing for Japan. And he thinks we're putting an end to all this way. And he's fighting for democracy, he's fighting for the Reds. He says it's for the peace of us all. He's the one who must decide who's to live and who's to die. And he never sees the writing on the wall. But without him, how would Hitler have condemned him at Laval? Without him, Caesar would have stood alone. He's the one who gives his body as a weapon of the war. And without him, all this killing can't go on. He's the universal soldier, and he really is to blame. His orders come from far away no more. They come from here and there, and you and me. Brothers, can't you see? This is not the way we put the end to war.
I like it. I like it a lot. It feels short. It felt shorter than when I heard it the other day. Yeah, a little over 3 minutes, so, not crazy short, but not exactly, a 4 or 5 minute track where it has a bit more space. But again, I do think it's saying, look, without these people serving these militaristic causes under different justifications, right? It's like, this side claims to be fighting for democracy, however legitimately or otherwise. This side claims to be fighting for the proletariat, for the Reds, however legitimately or otherwise. And these individual soldiers, that's a 17-year-old, it's a 31-year-old, they come from different backgrounds, but they are the instruments of violence and warfare, and all the different sides. And maybe some of the individual soldiers are saying, well, like, this is going to be the war that ends all wars. This is going to be the one, because we got to make them stop, and so on. But the idea that any of this will stop warfare or will lead to the, institution of a lasting, tranquil peace seems dubious. And as a historian, I would say yes, it does seem dubious that more warfare will lead to less violence. And we can, as scholars and concerned citizens, debate, justifications and how legitimate or otherwise for different conflicts. But at the end of the day, the, again, culpability of us all and the direct usage of the bodies of soldiers, both in terms of them giving their lives for these conflicts and being the instruments of military violence and destruction, it seems undeniable. So, yeah, we as humans and we as nation states and we as the denizens of planet Earth really should look in the mirror a little bit more. And, for those who are at least somewhat empathetic toward fellow humans and who don't want to see concerns of greed and power and imperial attitudes win the day, if we really do want to usher humanity into an era where military conflict is at the very least less common and not the first choice that people in power make to get what they want, then again, we got to start from the bottom up at the very least, and maybe elect people who are less cynical and less inclined toward brutality. But yeah, I find this to be a very compelling song. So shout out to Buffy Sainte-Marie for writing a really impactful song, which, it feels like this is a song that could be and apparently was written in the 1960s. So yeah, that's, I suppose, an important feature of the tune we hear. But in 2026, does it sound any less appropriate? If anything, it feels like it's, particularly suited for the modern era. And again, some of the specific references, maybe with me giving a special shout out to Canada, who, in the grand scheme of geopolitics and international warfare, seem not as culpable as some other nation states, and yet even then, there are dark aspects to Canadian history as well. But again, when it's like you're making reference to the United States and countries in Western Europe and Russia and so on and Japan, it's like you look at 20th and 21st century history and it's like, there's a lot of examples. But nevertheless, I think it is a fair point globally applied across cultures, societies, and nation states. So yeah, shout out to Depeche Mode for covering a cool song, and as I said, I think they do a good job. It sounds like they're, electric, dark synth pop type of style to a T, and thus, I suppose, shout out to Martin and Dave for carrying on the banner now that there's only 2 members of Depeche Mode. So yeah, I thought that was very cool. As I said, the other day I was surprised by it. I was like, wait, what is this? I've never heard this. And was able to track it down. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.